We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations. Wade Russell wiped sweat from his brow as he examined the Victorian mansion's intricate wooden molding. His calloused fingers traced the patterns his father had taught him to recognize years ago. See that, son? That's quarter sawn oak. They don't make them like this anymore. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Mr. Russell? A feminine voice pulled him from his thoughts. I'm Sarah Morrison, the interior designer for this project. Wade turned to face a woman in her early 30s, her portfolio clutched professionally against her navy blazer. Her presence commanded attention without trying, the kind of refined confidence that came from old money and good schools. Please call me Wade, he said, extending his hand. I was just admiring the original woodwork. Your father mentioned you have some ideas about preserving it. Sarah's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. Yes. I've been researching period-appropriate restoration techniques. I think we can save most of the original features without compromising on modern amenities. They spent the next hour walking through the mansion, their footsteps resonating through empty rooms. Sarah pointed out architectural details Wade hadn't noticed, while he explained the structural challenges they'd face. Their conversation flowed naturally, technical expertise mixing with shared appreciation for craftsmanship. Most clients want to get everything, Wade admitted, pausing in what would become a library. They see old houses as status symbols, not pieces of history. Sarah nodded, running her hand along a built-in bookshelf. I know the type. They hire me to create authentic period charm, using mass-produced replicas. She rolled her eyes. It's refreshing to work with someone who understands the value of preservation. Speaking of preservation, a deep voice called from the doorway. Frank Morrison stood there, his judicial presence softened by casual clothes and a warm smile. How about we break for lunch? I brought sandwiches from Kenny and Zook's. They settled in the future dining room, sitting on improvised seats made from construction materials. Frank unwrapped the deli paper with practiced care. So, Wade, Frank said, passing him a pastrami on rye. Tell me about that beam replacement you're planning for the master bedroom. Dad, Sarah protested, it's lunch. Can we talk about something besides construction? Frank raised an eyebrow. You seemed pretty interested in construction details a few minutes ago. Wade watched their interaction with interest. Despite their obvious wealth, there was none of the artificial formality he'd encountered with other high-end clients. Frank treated his workers with respect, learning their names and asking about their families. Your father used to work construction, didn't he? Frank asked, his tone careful. Wade nodded, swallowing a bite of sandwich. 25 years with Miller and Sons. He taught me everything I know about old houses. Used to? Sarah asked softly. He died when I was 17. Industrial accident. Wade met Frank's eyes. The company had been cutting corners on safety equipment. After that, I promised myself I'd never put profit before worker safety. Frank's expression shifted subtly. Recognition, respect. That's why you have those extra safety protocols in your contracts. I wondered about that. The conversation drifted to lighter topics. Sarah shared stories about difficult clients, making Wade laugh with her spot-on impressions. Frank reminisced about the house's history, painting pictures of past residents with a judge's attention to detail. Over the next few months, these lunch breaks became a ritual. Wade found himself looking forward to Frank's visits, the older man's wisdom and dry humor reminding him of his own father. Sarah started bringing coffee from the fancy shop near her office, remembering how each crew member took theirs. One afternoon, Wade overheard two of his workers talking as they stripped old wallpaper. Never worked for anyone like Russell before, Mike said, carefully removing a stubborn section. Most bosses wouldn't spend extra on these safety harnesses. Ray nodded, adjusting his protective glasses. Did you see him turn down that high-rise project last month? Thompson offered him serious money, but Wade wouldn't budge on using non-union labor. My last boss would have jumped at that deal, Mike replied, then pocketed the difference on materials. That's why he's your last boss, Ray said firmly. Wade's different. He actually gives a damn. The mansion gradually transformed under their care. Sarah's design choices complemented the original architecture while subtly incorporating modern comforts. She spent hours researching period-appropriate materials, often consulting Wade about their practical applications. Their professional relationship shifted imperceptibly. Wade found reasons to visit her office with questions about design details. Sarah started arriving early to walk through the day's tasks with him, their conversations stretching beyond work. The crew noticed. Good-natured teasing circulated among the workers, but always with an undertone of approval. They'd seen how Sarah treated them with respect, bringing hot coffee during cold mornings and remembering details about their families. Frank observed the developing attraction with quiet satisfaction. He invited Wade to dinner at his downtown condo, ostensibly to discuss the project. The conversation meandered through Wade's business philosophy, his plans for growing the company, and, eventually, his intentions towards Sarah. "She's different from her social circle," Frank said, pouring Wade a glass of whiskey. "Her mother and I divorced when she was young. I made sure she understood the value of hard work, not just inherited privilege." Wade appreciated Frank's directness. "I'm not exactly country club material, sir." "Good," Frank replied simply. "We have enough of those already." He studied Wade over his glass. "You remind me of myself at your age. I worked my way through law school as a janitor. The other judges never let me forget it until they needed someone who understood real people's problems." The proposal happened naturally during a quiet moment in the nearly completed library. Sarah was examining paint samples while Wade installed the last section of refinished crown molding. "We make a good team," Sarah said, watching him work. "In more ways than one." Wade climbed down from the ladder, dusting off his hands. "We do." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small box. "I was thinking maybe we could make it permanent." The ring was modest by her social circle standards. A vintage piece he'd found in an antique shop, its design echoing the mansion's architectural details. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she recognized the thought behind it. "It's perfect," she whispered, slipping onto her finger. "Just like this house. Something old made new again, but keeping its soul intact." Their wedding was held in the mansion's gardens once restoration was complete. Wade's crew formed as groomsmen, their rented tuxedos unable to hide their proud grins. Sarah's society friends clustered together, whispering behind their programs about the unusual match. Frank's wedding speech silenced the critics. He spoke of integrity, of character built through honest work, of love that saw beyond surface appearances. "Some men," he concluded, looking directly at the whispering society crowd, "measure success by their bank accounts. Others measure it by the lives they've touched and the principles they've upheld. My new son-in-law belongs to the second category, and I couldn't be prouder to welcome him to our family." The first 2 years passed in comfortable rhythm. Wade's business grew steadily, his reputation for quality work and ethical practices attracting clients who shared his values. Sarah proved an unexpected asset, her design expertise and business connections complementing his practical skills. They developed a unique restoration philosophy, combining historical accuracy with modern functionality. Sarah joined Wade on job sites, her elegant presence contrasting with the construction environment, but her knowledge earning respect from the workers. "Watch how she handles difficult clients," Ray commented to a new hire. "Last week, some tech millionaire wanted to gut a 1920s craftsman. She spent an hour educating him about architectural history and original features. By the end, he was practically begging to do a historical restoration." Wade and Sarah began planning their own projects, identifying neglected historic properties they could restore together. Their different backgrounds proved advantageous. Wade understood the technical challenges, while Sarah navigated the social and political aspects of preservation. Everything changed with Frank's stroke. The man who had mentored Wade, who had championed their relationship, suddenly lay vulnerable in a hospital bed. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but the recovery would be long and difficult. "He can't stay alone in his condo," Sarah insisted, pacing their living room. "He needs full-time care." Wade nodded, already calculating modifications they need for wheelchair access. The mansion has plenty of space. We can convert the ground floor guest suite. The decision to move into the mansion seemed logical, practical. Neither of them recognized it as the first crack in their foundation, the moment their carefully constructed life began to shift. Maria Santos arrived with excellent references and a calm demeanor that put Frank at ease. She treated him with dignity, understanding the frustration of a brilliant mind trapped in an uncooperative body. "Senior Judge Morrison," she said firmly on her first day, "we will work together to help you recover. But you must be patient with yourself." Frank's eyes sparked with familiar determination. He couldn't speak clearly yet, but his nod conveyed understanding. Wade recognized that look. It was the same one he'd seen in the judge's eyes during difficult cases, the quiet resolve that had earned him respect from colleagues and opponents alike. Wade divided his time between managing his business and overseeing Frank's care. He noticed Sarah's increasing absences, but attributed them to work stress. They were all adjusting to new rhythms, finding their way through changed circumstances. If he had looked closer, he might have seen the signs earlier. But Wade Russell had always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. It was a principle that had served him well in business and in life, until it didn't. Chapter 2. The Facade Crumbles. Maria Santos watched Sarah Morrison check her reflection in the hallway mirror, adjusting her blazer. These evening client meetings had become more frequent, each one accompanied by a new outfit and carefully applied makeup. "Mr. Frank already ate dinner," Maria reported, keeping her tone neutral. "He asked about you." Sarah's hands faltered slightly as she applied lipstick. "I'll make it up to him this weekend. This client is important. They're renovating an entire historic block downtown." Maria nodded, noting how Sarah avoided eye contact. After 6 months caring for Frank Morrison, she'd learned to read the family dynamics. Wade worked longer hours managing his construction business, while Sarah's interior design career supposedly demanded more evening meetings and weekend consultations. "Diego," Maria called softly after Sarah left. Her 17-year-old son emerged from the kitchen, where he'd been doing homework while keeping Frank company. "Did you notice anything today?" Diego's dark eyes held a maturity beyond his years. "Mr. Frank tried really hard in therapy, but he seemed sad when Mrs. Sarah said she couldn't join us for dinner again." Maria squeezed his shoulder, proud of his observation skills. Diego had started helping with Frank's physical therapy sessions, showing natural talent for patient care. More importantly, he'd formed a genuine bond with the former judge. "That new camera you saved up for," Maria said carefully. "Perhaps you could practice taking photos around the neighborhood. The evening light is very good for learning photography." Diego's quick smile showed he understood her subtle suggestion. "I'll start tomorrow. Maybe near that French restaurant Mrs. Sarah mentioned." The next few weeks established a pattern. Diego would do his homework at the mansion, help with Frank's therapy, then spend an hour practicing photography at strategic locations. He showed Maria his results each night, mostly architectural shots of historic buildings, but occasionally capturing something more revealing. "Look at this one, Mama," Diego said one evening, displaying his camera screen. The image showed Sarah leaving Lou Pigeon Restaurant, her hand clasped intimately with a well-dressed man's. Even in profile, Blake Thompson's features were unmistakable to anyone familiar with Portland's development community. Maria had heard Wade mention Thompson before, always with carefully controlled disapproval. The developer was known for undercutting local contractors and disregarding preservation guidelines. His luxury projects prioritized profit over craftsmanship, everything Wade Russell stood against. "Does Mr. Wade know about these client meetings?" Diego asked, his young face troubled. Maria shook her head. "It's not our place to interfere, Mijo, but keep taking your pictures. Sometimes truth needs witnesses." The revelation came during one of Frank's therapy sessions. Wade had arrived early, wanting to discuss some home modifications with Maria. Diego was helping Frank with arm exercises when Sarah's distinctive laugh drifted through the open window. Wade moved to the window, then froze. From their second-floor vantage point, the scene below was clear. Sarah and Blake Thompson engaged in an intimate embrace beside his distinctive Tesla. "I have more photos," Diego said quietly, pulling out his camera. "I'm sorry, Mr. Wade. We didn't know how to tell you." Wade's face remained composed as he examined the images. Only his whitened knuckles revealed the strain. "How long?" "3 months, at least," Maria answered gently. The meetings started becoming regular around then. Frank made a frustrated sound from his wheelchair. His speech had improved, but emotional moments still triggered difficulties. "Knew something wrong," he managed, reaching for Wade's arm. The confrontation happened that evening. Wade laid Diego's photos on the dining room table, arranged in chronological order. Sarah's reaction wasn't what anyone expected. "So you had me followed?" Her voice held more annoyance than guilt. "That's rather pedestrian, darling." Diego was practicing photography. Wade replied evenly. "He has an eye for capturing revealing moments." Sarah's laugh held no warmth. "And your loyal employees reported back to you. How convenient." She picked up one of the photos, examining it critically. "Though I must admit, the composition is quite good." "Why Blake Thompson?" Wade's question cut through her artificial calm. "Of all people, why him?" "Because he understands ambition." Sarah's mask slipped, revealing something harder beneath. "He's building the future of Portland, not clinging to the past like you and Daddy." Frank wheeled himself forward, his movements determined despite their awkwardness. "Sarah, please." "Oh, Daddy." Sarah's tone dripped condescension. "You've been playing at being helpless, hoping I'd prove myself worthy of your approval. Did you think I wouldn't notice the extra exercises you do when you think no one's watching?" Frank's face paled. Maria stepped forward protectively, but Wade's gesture stopped her. "I've outgrown this little experiment in working-class virtue," Sarah continued. "Blake offers everything I was raised to expect. Influence, social position, real wealth. Not just for storing old houses and feeling morally superior about safety regulations." Wade absorbed each word without visible reaction. "You've been sabotaging my project bids." Blake simply made better offers. Sarah shrugged elegantly. "Business is business, darling. You taught me that." "I taught you about integrity," Wade replied quietly. "About building something that lasts." How charmingly provincial. Sarah gathered her handbag. "You'll be hearing from Blake's lawyers tomorrow. He's prepared to be generous about the divorce settlement. You can keep this mausoleum if you don't contest anything else." The sound of Frank's breathing grew labored. Maria recognized the signs of increasing stress, moving quickly to check his pulse. "Mr. Frank needs his medication," she said firmly. "This conversation is over." Sarah paused at the door, her expression almost pitying. "I did love you, Wade, in my way, but I was meant for more than being a contractor's wife." After she left, the house felt suddenly larger, emptier. Maria busied herself with Frank's evening routine, while Diego quietly gathered the scattered photos. "I'll stay late tonight," Maria offered, watching Wade's rigid posture with concern. "No." Wade's voice was steady. "Go home to your family. We'll be fine." He turned to Frank, whose color was slowly returning to normal. "Let's get you ready for bed, Judge. Tomorrow's another therapy day." Later that night, Wade found himself in his home office, reviewing project files with new understanding. Contracts that had mysteriously fallen through, clients who had unexpectedly changed their minds. Each instance now carried Blake Thompson's invisible fingerprints. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Diego stood in the doorway, holding his camera. "Mr. Wade, I have something else you should see." He connected the camera to Wade's computer, pulling up a folder of images. "I've been documenting everything. Not just Mrs. Sarah and Mr. Thompson. Their meetings with other people, exchanges of documents, times, and locations." Wade studied the organized evidence. "You've got quite a talent for investigation, Diego." The teenager straightened proudly. "Mr. Frank's been teaching me about gathering evidence. He says photos aren't just art, they're records of truth." Wade studied the young man with new respect. While he'd been focused on his business and Frank's care, others have been watching out for his interests. "Thank you, Diego. Your mother's raised a good man." The next morning, a thick envelope arrived from Blake's lawyers. The divorce papers were expertly crafted, offering Wade possession of the mansion in exchange for a quick, uncontested settlement. The underlying assumption was clear. They thought the house was Sarah's most valuable asset. Maria arrived to find Wade in the kitchen, making coffee. "Mr. Frank is awake," she reported. "He's asking for you." In Frank's room, the former judge sat in his wheelchair by the window. His speech was clearer today, determination evident in his posture. "We need to talk about Sarah." Wade pulled up a chair. "I know this is difficult for you, sir." Frank shook his head impatiently. "Not what you think. Sarah's been like this before." Each word was carefully formed, fought for. "Rebecca, her mother, tried to warn me." "I thought Rebecca abandoned you both," Wade said, remembering Sarah's bitter stories about her absent mother. Sarah's version, Frank managed. "Not truth. Rebecca saw problems early. I didn't listen." Maria appeared with Frank's morning medication. "Perhaps this conversation should wait until after therapy?" But Frank waved her concern away. "Need Wade to understand. Sarah learned manipulation young. Used it on Rebecca, then me." Wade absorbed this revelation, pieces of the past shifting into new patterns. Sarah's perfectly crafted narratives about her childhood, her mother's supposed instability and abandonment, all designed to maintain control of her father's affections and resources. "Get me journal," Frank instructed Maria. Desk drawer. The leather-bound notebook contained detailed observations written in Frank's precise hand. Even after his stroke, he'd continued documenting Sarah's behavior, her gradual withdrawal, the inconsistencies in her stories. His judicial instincts had never truly retired. Chapter 3. Hidden Truths. The discovery of Frank's therapy journal happened by accident. Wade was reorganizing the study to accommodate Frank's wheelchair when he found the hidden notebook behind a loose panel. Its pages revealed a different story than the one they'd all believed. "Look at these exercise logs," Wade showed Maria. He's been tracking his progress for months, but deliberately holding back during official therapy sessions. Maria studied the careful notations. "The progress charts I've been keeping for the doctor, they don't match his private exercises at all. He's much stronger than he lets on." They confronted Frank that evening in his study. The former judge listened to their concerns without surprise, his expression thoughtful. "Had to test her," he explained, his speech increasingly clear. "Sarah always wanted control, money, power." He gestured to the journal. "Keep reading." The notebook contained more than exercise logs. Frank had been documenting everything: Sarah's changing behavior patterns, her excuses for missing family dinners, the subtle ways she'd begun distancing herself from Wade's working-class background. "But why pretend to be more disabled than you are?" Wade asked, struggling to understand. Frank's eyes held a mixture of sadness and determination. "Needed to see her character when money wasn't certain." "What money?" Maria asked sharply. Frank wheeled himself to his desk, retrieving another hidden document. The lottery ticket confirmation made Wade's eyes widen. The win had happened just before Frank's stroke, the amount substantial enough to change lives. "Offshore account," Frank explained. "Sarah doesn't know. Tried accessing my assets, though. Have proof." Wade remembered Sarah's confident assertion about the mansion during their confrontation. She and Blake had assumed it was Frank's most valuable asset because they hadn't found any evidence of a lottery win. "Does Rebecca know?" Wade asked, thinking of Sarah's estranged mother. Frank nodded. "She helps manage it. Legal background, trustworthy." He gripped Wade's arm with surprising strength. Sarah tried, same tactics on her. Made Rebecca look unstable when she questioned Sarah's spending. The situation gained new complexity when Jimmy Carter, one of Wade's former employees, requested a private meeting. They met at a small coffee shop far from Sarah's usual haunts. "I took a job with Thompson's company," Jimmy explained, nervously stirring his coffee. "Needed the money after my wife's medical bills." "But Wade, they're not just going after your business. They're investigating the judge's finances." Wade kept his expression neutral. "What kind of investigation?" "Thompson's hired private investigators. They're tracking everyone who works with Mr. Morrison, doctors, therapists, even a pharmacy delivery guy, looking for unusual bank activities, offshore accounts, anything they can use. The information confirmed Wade's growing suspicions. Sarah and Blake's interest in Frank's care wasn't driven by concern. They were hunting for hidden assets. "There's more," Jimmy added, lowering his voice. "Thompson's got someone inside the medical team. They're documenting everything about Mr. Morrison's condition, building a case to challenge his competency." Wade thanked Jimmy for the warning, his mind already formulating plans. That evening, he gathered his most trusted workers for a different kind of construction project. "We're upgrading the mansion's security," he announced, spreading out blueprints. "I need people I can trust who understand discretion." Ray Martinez, his foreman, studied the plans. "These aren't standard security measures, boss." "No," Wade agreed, "because we're not just protecting against ordinary threats." Diego, who had joined the meeting at Wade's request, raised his hand. "I can help with the technical aspects. I've been studying surveillance systems." The security upgrade transformed the mansion into a sophisticated fortress, though you wouldn't know it from the outside. Cameras covered every approach, monitored through a system Diego designed. Wade's construction workers, many of whom had military backgrounds, took shifts providing unobtrusive security. The final piece fell into place when Maria revealed her own background in medical documentation. "I didn't just choose this career by chance," she explained. "I used to work for the district attorney's office, documenting evidence in medical fraud cases." Frank's quiet chuckle surprised them all. "Why do you think I hired her?" His speech was clearer every day, though he maintained his more disabled appearance when Sarah visited. "Best witnesses are the ones nobody notices." The storm broke during an unexpected rainstorm. Sarah arrived unannounced, her expensive clothes artfully disheveled, her eyes brimming with calculated tears. "I made a terrible mistake," she declared, reaching for Wade's hand. "Blake isn't who I thought he was. I miss our life together." Wade allowed her performance to continue, noting how her eyes darted around the room, cataloging changes. Diego's hidden cameras caught Blake's car idling around the corner, while the surveillance system recorded their synchronized text messages, planning this spontaneous reconciliation. The facade crumbled when Blake emerged from hiding, his practiced charm giving way to frustration. "Enough games," he snapped. "We know the judge is faking his condition. Sign over the mansion, or we'll expose his fraudulent medical claims." "Interesting theory." Maria's calm voice cut through the tension. She stepped forward, digital recorder in hand. "Would you like to elaborate on that for the district attorney's office?" The color drained from Blake's face as Maria explained her connection to the DA's office. Sarah's composure cracked, her society polish giving way to unveiled fury. "You planned this," she accused Wade. "You and Daddy, always so concerned with your precious integrity. Do you know what that's worth in the real world?" "More than you'd think." Frank's strong voice startled everyone. He wheeled himself into the room, his posture straight, his speech clear and judicial. "I've been building a case, Sarah, just like the old days. Want to see my evidence?" The confrontation ended with Sarah and Blake's retreat, but their expressions promised more battles to come. After they left, Wade found Frank in his study, staring at an old photo of Sarah as a child. "I failed her," Frank said softly, his carefully maintained strength falling away. "Gave her everything, except understanding of what really matters." Wade gripped his father-in-law's shoulder. "You showed her the path. She chose a different one." "The real test," Frank replied, his judicial wisdom returning, "is what we do now that we know the truth." They gathered in the study, Wade, Frank, Maria, Diego, and the core team of trusted workers. The mansion's security systems hummed quietly, recording everything, while outside the rain continued its steady rhythm. "They'll come back," Wade said, looking at each face in turn. "This was just the opening move." Frank nodded, his expression grim but determined. "Then we'll be ready. Some battles are worth fighting, no matter the cost." The former judge's words hung in the air, a declaration of war wrapped in quiet dignity. In the mansion's restored rooms, among people bound by loyalty rather than greed, Wade realized they'd built something stronger than Sarah and Blake could understand, a foundation based on trust, integrity, and the kind of loyalty money couldn't buy. Chapter 4: Systematic Destruction. Wade Russell sat in his office, studying the stack of complaints from the Construction Licensing Board. His coffee had gone cold, forgotten during hours of reviewing documentation. Each paper represented another anonymous accusation, each one targeting a different aspect of his business practices. A knock at his door interrupted his concentration. Ray Martinez entered, carrying a fresh stack of binders. "We've organized all safety certificates by project and date," he reported. "Added photos and worker signatures for extra verification." "What about the new inspection schedule?" Wade asked, rubbing his temples. 3 separate inspectors in the next 2 weeks. Lisa's coordinating with project managers to ensure all sites are ready. Ray paused, choosing his words carefully. "It's not random anymore, Wade. They're trying to drown us in paperwork." The first inspector arrived at their downtown renovation project at 7 a.m. sharp. She found Wade's crew already assembled, conducting their morning safety briefing. Each worker wore proper protective equipment, their certification cards displayed on high-visibility vests. "I'm here about complaint number 47B, she announced, consulting her tablet. "Regarding improper safety protocols for height work." Ray stepped forward, opening one of their prepared binders. "You'll find our harness inspection logs here, along with load testing certificates. We actually exceed code requirements by significant margins." The inspector frowned, scanning the documentation. "And worker training records?" "Monthly updates," Wade provided another binder, "including specialized modules for historic restoration techniques. We also maintain video records of all training sessions." As the inspector moved through her checklist, finding compliance at every turn, Wade noticed a familiar car parked across the street. Through its tinted windows, he glimpsed someone taking photographs. The equipment sabotage began that afternoon. The blade of a crucial saw was found damaged, forcing them to delay work on custom moldings. 2 days later, their primary drill press failed during a precision boring operation. Lisa Chun stormed into Wade's office, her usual composed demeanor cracking. The excavator's hydraulic line burst during foundation work at the Peterson project. She placed a silver cufflink on his desk. "Found this near the equipment. Pretty fancy for a construction site." Wade picked up the cufflink, examining the engraved initials. "J.H. Jackson Hayes," he muttered. "Blake's bringing in ghosts from the past." "Hayes?" Lisa's eyes widened. "The one who used substandard concrete in that school project?" "The same. Could have killed hundreds of kids if we hadn't caught it." Wade pocketed the cufflink. "Blake's not just trying to shut us down. He's making it personal." Jimmy Carter confirmed their suspicions during a clandestine meeting at a small diner far from their usual haunts. The former employee, now working undercover in Blake's organization, looked nervous as he stirred his coffee. "Hayes is officially Thompson's new site security consultant," Jimmy reported. "But he's really coordinating with others who have grudges against you. They're targeting your crew now, not just equipment." Wade's jaw tightened. "Names?" "Marcus Chin's involved, Lisa's husband. They're feeding him stories about you putting Lisa in danger. And they've hired advanced protection services for special projects." Jimmy glanced around before continuing. "These guys aren't regular security, Wade. They're professionals at making accidents happen." The warning proved prophetic. Ray's truck suffered brake failure on his way to his site inspection. Only his Marine Corps defensive driving training prevented a serious accident. Lisa received an envelope containing photos of her children at their school playground, along with notes describing potential workplace accidents. Wade called an emergency meeting at his home office, away from potentially compromised locations. His core team gathered: Ray, Lisa, Jimmy, Maria, and Diego. Frank insisted on attending, wheeling himself to a position where he could observe everyone. "They're escalating," Wade began, spreading photos of the sabotaged equipment across his desk. "I won't risk your families. Anyone who wants out." "Stop right there," Ray interrupted. "My guys are already adapting. We've installed dash cams in all vehicles, implemented a buddy system for travel. Lisa's kids have protection, Guys I served with completely loyal. Lisa nodded firmly. My team's documenting everything. Times, dates, photographs. We're building a pattern they can't deny. I've got something else, Diego spoke up, opening his laptop. Been monitoring Hayes's movements. He meets the same person every Tuesday at Riverside Coffee. Look at their jacket. The surveillance footage showed Hayes speaking with someone wearing an Advanced Protection Services uniform. Ray leaned closer to the screen. That's their Special Operations Supervisor. They handle Thompson's sensitive security needs. They're hiring, Maria added. My cousin applied, thinking it was regular security work. The interview questions focused on handling difficult situations and maintaining client confidentiality. Frank wheeled forward, his voice stronger than usual. Classic intimidation network. Saw it during my judicial days. They hire people with specific skills, then maintain deniability through layers of contractors. The church restoration project became their proving ground. Veronica Blackwood, a wealthy client from Sarah's interior design firm, requested an urgent private meeting with Wade. Sarah's been stealing from us for years, Veronica revealed, spreading financial documents across Wade's desk. She inflates material costs, creates fake invoices, pockets the difference. That new car she's driving? Paid for with my overcharged wallpaper budget. The evidence was meticulous. Bank transfers, altered invoices, email trails showing Sarah's systematic embezzlement from her wealthy clients. Her recent luxury purchases hadn't come from Blake's generosity. She'd built her own slush fund through years of careful fraud. Why come forward now? Wade asked, studying the documents. Veronica's perfectly manicured nails tapped the church restoration plans. Because they're planning something bigger. I overheard Sarah and Blake discussing the project. They've already arranged for the Historical Preservation Board to reject your permits, citing structural concerns. Wade used this intelligence to set an elaborate trap. His team quietly reinforced all scaffolding, installed hidden cameras, and documented every safety measure. Then they waited. Hayes arrived at night, just as predicted. Instead of confronting him directly, Wade orchestrated a different kind of demonstration. The next morning, he hosted a special safety inspection for city officials, showcasing the extra security measures coincidentally installed exactly where Hayes had targeted. These reinforced connection points, Wade explained to the impressed inspectors, represent our commitment to preserving historical architecture safely. Each one is monitored electronically, with real-time stress analysis. Hayes watched from across the street, his frustration visible. That night, Diego's cameras caught him attempting to break into the site office. The police response was immediate, triggered by silent alarms Wade had installed. Found these in his pocket, the arresting officer displayed a set of master keys to the church, along with some interesting notes about scaffold weight tolerances. Wade's expression remained professional, but his voice carried steel. Document everything. We're building a case. The arrest marked a turning point. Blake's tactics had escalated from harassment to attempted murder. Wade gathered his team again, this time to plan their counterattack. We're done playing defense, he announced. Time to show them what real builders can do. Chapter 5, The Spider's Web. Marcus Reynolds' hands shook slightly as he arranged documents on Wade's desk. The former developer's expensive suit hung loose on his frame, testament to years of stress and declining fortunes. Thompson's strategy is always the same, Marcus explained, pointing to a timeline he'd created. He identifies successful businesses that won't sell, then systematically destroys them. Started with my company 5 years ago. Wade studied the familiar pattern: anonymous complaints, equipment failures, worker intimidation. You were his partner? Until I questioned some insurance claims. Marcus's laugh held no humor. Within months, I faced fraud charges. Evidence appeared from nowhere. Witnesses changed their stories. Lost everything: company, reputation, family. The implications for Wade's business became clearer as Marcus detailed Blake's tactics. Local suppliers who stayed loyal to Wade faced increasing regulatory pressure. Mike's Lumber, a family-owned business that had supplied Wade for years, suddenly faced multiple government investigations. They're isolating you, Marcus explained. Cut off your supply chain. Force you to use Thompson's vendors. That's when the real corruption starts. Inflated prices, substandard materials, kickback schemes. The attack on Maria happened on a Tuesday evening. She was walking to her car in the mansion's parking lot when a man in workout clothes approached, asking for directions. The attack was professional, designed to look like a random robbery. What the assailant didn't know was that Diego had upgraded the security cameras with military-grade night vision. The footage caught everything, including the distinctive Advanced Protection Services training techniques. Sophia Reeves, Marcus's former sister-in-law, reviewed the footage with practiced eyes. Her military intelligence background picked up details others missed. That's not standard security training, she noted, freezing the frame. Those are specialized intimidation techniques. Watch how he positions himself, meant to cause pain without leaving obvious bruises. Frank's medical difficulties intensified under his new doctor's care. Dr. Patricia Collins, recommended through Blake's medical connections, prescribed medications that left him increasingly confused and weak. Something's wrong, Maria insisted, showing Wade the latest prescription bottles. These side effects don't match anything in the medical literature. Laboratory analysis revealed the truth. The medications had been deliberately mislabeled. The discovery led them to Dr. Amanda Hayes, Jackson's wife, who had been manipulating Frank's treatment plan through her position on the hospital's pharmacy board. Sarah's social campaign proved equally calculated. She cultivated relationships with the wives of Wade's employees, hosting intimate tea parties where she shared concerns about workplace safety and financial stability. Lisa Chun felt the impact directly. Her husband, Michael, influenced by Sarah's carefully planted suggestions, threatened to take their children and leave. She showed me proof, Michael accused, waving photographs of construction sites. Said Wade's covering up accidents, putting Lisa in dangerous situations. There are hospital records. The situation came to a head during a dinner Frank hosted for Wade's employees and their families. Despite his medication-induced difficulties, the former judge commanded attention as he addressed the gathered group. I've watched this company grow, Frank began, his voice growing stronger with each word. Seeing how Wade places your safety above profit. Now, let me show you how truth can be twisted into lies. Rebecca Morrison's appearance shocked the room into silence. Sarah's mother stepped forward, her elegant posture belying years of pain. I didn't abandon my family, she stated clearly. I was pushed out after discovering inappropriate messages between my teenage daughter and an older man, Blake Thompson. The evidence she presented went beyond memories. Photographs from Sarah's college years showed her at charity events with Blake. Their current affair wasn't spontaneous. It was the culmination of a long-term plan. They targeted wealthy families, Rebecca explained, her voice steady. Sarah would befriend their children, learn family secrets. Blake would use that information in his business dealings. When I tried to intervene, Sarah convinced Frank I was mentally unstable. Wade's investigation uncovered deeper connections. Blake specialized in acquiring properties from families facing personal crises. Sarah's design firm often worked with these same families, gaining intimate knowledge of their finances and vulnerabilities. Watch the timing, Marcus pointed out, spreading transaction records across the table. Sarah begins working with a family. Within months, they face unexpected problems. Then Blake appears offering to help by buying their properties at discount prices. The web extended into medical records. Dr. Amanda Hayes had received referrals from Sarah's firm, specifically for wealthy clients who later faced health crises that forced property sales. It's a sophisticated operation, Sophia concluded, connecting threads on their evidence board. Sarah identifies targets and gathers intelligence. Blake provides the business infrastructure and political connections. They've been running this scheme for years. The revelation of Sarah's teenage manipulation by Blake added a disturbing dimension to their understanding. Rebecca shared diary entries from Sarah's high school years, showing how Blake had gradually shaped her worldview. He taught her to see relationships as transactions, Rebecca explained, her hands trembling slightly as she read from the journals. People became assets to be managed or obstacles to be removed. I watched my daughter disappear into his influence, unable to stop it. The scope of their operation stunned even Wade. Blake and Sarah hadn't just built a real estate empire. They'd created a sophisticated network of corruption, using intimate knowledge of their victims' lives to maximize pressure points. Frank, reviewing the evidence with his old judicial thoroughness, recognized patterns from cases he'd handled. They prey on trust, he observed. Use people's basic decency against them. But that's also their weakness. Wade gathered his team, the loyal workers, the vigilant allies, the determined investigators. They had uncovered the spider's web. Now it was time to tear it down. Chapter 6, Counterstrikes. Wade's counterattack began. Using his deep construction knowledge, he identified critical flaws in Blake's developments. Nothing immediately dangerous, but guaranteed to require expensive repairs. Water intrusion behind improperly sealed walls. Ray explained to housing inspectors. Settlement issues from rush foundation work. All documented in these site photos. The complaints came from multiple sources, concerned citizens, industry watchdogs, former employees. Each focused on different properties, making the pattern untraceable to Wade's team. Diego's technical skills proved invaluable. He developed software tracking Blake's project bids, allowing Wade's network of allied contractors to consistently underbid him by small margins. We're not just competing on price, Lisa explained during a strategy meeting. Each bid includes detailed quality comparisons, proving you can maintain standards and still make profit. The pressure forced Blake to cut corners more obviously. Safety violations accumulated. Workers' compensation claims increased. His once reliable subcontractors began looking elsewhere for work. Lisa Chin's discovery of Blake's shell corporations opened new avenues of attack. Environmental advocacy groups received anonymous documentation of properties with toxic cleanup violations. These shell companies, Marcus examined the corporate registrations. They're registered in tax havens. But the ownership trails lead back to Thompson's primary holding company. The situation escalated when Viktor Petrov, a legitimate Russian businessman, discovered Blake had been using his reputation to attract investors. Wade's team presented evidence of how Blake had misrepresented their connection. My reputation, Petrov stated during a private meeting, was built through decades of legitimate business. I did not appreciate thieves using my name. Sarah's design firm faced its own crisis. Veronica Blackwood strategically shared information about Sarah's embezzlement among Portland's social elite. Clients began auditing their accounts, finding consistent discrepancies. She tried blaming her employees, Veronica reported. But they had protected themselves, kept records of her instructions, saved texts and emails about altered invoices. Frank's health stabilized once his medication was corrected. Working with Rebecca, now an experienced paralegal, he documented Sarah's history of manipulation and Blake's involvement. The pattern started in high school, Rebecca explained, sharing journals from Sarah's teenage years. She learned to isolate people from their support systems, just as Blake had done to her. Then she'd leverage their vulnerabilities. Catherine Thompson, Blake's estranged sister, provided the final piece. Wade offered her a position managing his company's finances, gaining access to years of documented fraud. Blake stole my inheritance, Catherine explained, her bitterness evident. Used legal tricks our parents never understood. I've been gathering evidence ever since. The attempted hostile takeover of Wade's company failed spectacularly. His employees, suppliers, and clients presented a united front against Blake's pressures. Frank's public interview, his first since the stroke, delivered a crucial blow. He detailed Blake's history of elder abuse and fraud, his judicial authority lending weight to each accusation. Some people, he concluded, looking directly into the cameras, mistake wealth for worth. They build empires on broken trust and stolen dreams. But true value lies in integrity, in standing firm when corruption calls. The confrontation at the city council meeting marked a crucial turning point. Blake arrived expecting his usual smooth performance. Instead, He faced a coordinated presentation of evidence from multiple sources. Mr. Thompson's developments show a pattern, Wade demonstrated, displaying structural reports from independent engineers. Cutting corners, using substandard materials, rushing inspections. Each project starts strong, then deteriorates within months of completion. Blake maintained his composure until Wade revealed the connection between failed projects and Sarah's design clients. Ms. Morrison's firm handled interior design for these properties. Each client later reported significant financial losses. "This is slander," Blake interrupted, rising from his seat. "You're just bitter about your wife choosing someone more successful." "Success built on fraud isn't success, Blake," Wade replied calmly. "Ask your sister Catherine about that." The mention of his sister cracked Blake's facade. "Leave her out of this, Russell. You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Actually, I do." Wade nodded to Catherine, who entered the chamber carrying financial records. "Your sister's been documenting your schemes for years. Want to explain these offshore accounts to the council?" Blake's public threat, "You'll regret this interference, Russell," was captured by multiple cameras. The footage spread quickly through Portland's business community, damaging his carefully cultivated image of respectability. Back at the mansion, Wade's team analyzed the shifting dynamics. Sophia reviewed security protocols while Diego monitored surveillance feeds. Maria reported subtle improvements in Frank's condition now that his medication was correct. "They've lost their cloak of legitimacy," Marcus observed, updating their evidence boards. Blake's investors are asking questions about project delays and cost overruns. "Sarah's clients are comparing notes too," Veronica added. 3 more families discovered fraudulent charges this week. They're preparing a joint legal complaint. Catherine's financial records proved devastating. She meticulously documented Blake's methods of hiding assets and manipulating property values. "He thought I was too broken after he stole my inheritance to fight back," she explained. "Never understood that some things matter more than money." The attempted hostile takeover showed their desperation. Blake tried leveraging his banking connections to force a sale of Wade's company, but the united response from employees, suppliers, and clients thwarted his plans. Frank's televised interview delivered the final blow to their public image. Speaking with the authority of his judicial years, he detailed the pattern of elder abuse and fraud. His clear speech and sharp mind contradicted their claims about his mental decline. "I've seen corruption wear many masks," Frank stated, his voice strong. "But it always follows the same pattern, using people's trust against them, turning relationships into weapons. Blake Thompson and my daughter didn't just steal money. They stole faith in human decency." The interview's impact rippled through Portland's business community. Blake's investors demanded audits. Construction permits faced renewed scrutiny. Sarah's wealthy clients distanced themselves publicly. Yet Wade noticed something concerning in their opponents' reactions. Instead of retreating, Blake and Sarah appeared almost calm. Their last encounter at a charity gala carried undertones of suppressed victory. "Careful," Sophia warned, reviewing security footage. "That's not defeat in their eyes. That's anticipation." Wade called an emergency strategy session. His core team gathered in Frank's study. Ray with his military experience, Lisa's project management skills, Diego's technical expertise, and Maria's patient observations. "They're planning something big," Wade concluded. "All this public pressure, they're not fighting it like we'd expect." "Because they want us focused on the business angle," Frank interjected, "while they prepare something else entirely." The mansion's security systems had been upgraded again. Diego's cameras covered every approach. Ray's former military contacts provided discreet protection. Everything seemed secure, yet Wade felt a growing unease. "We've exposed their methods," he acknowledged to his team, "shown their true nature to the world. But cornered predators are the most dangerous." Frank wheeled himself to the window, watching the garden where Maria conducted his therapy sessions. "They mistake integrity for weakness," he mused. "That's always been their fatal flaw. But remember, they've had years to plan contingencies. This isn't over." Wade surveyed his assembled team. Loyal workers, vigilant allies, determined investigators. They'd built something stronger than Blake's empire of lies, a foundation of trust and shared purpose. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The security systems maintained their quiet vigilance. In the garden, Maria helped Frank with his strengthening exercises. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the mansion's grounds, marking the end of one phase of their battle. The storm wasn't over, but they had weathered its first brutal assault. Now, they had to prepare for its fury to return in full force. Chapter 7: Desperate Measures. Maria Santos noticed the changes during Frank's morning therapy session. His right hand trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass, a tremor different from his usual movement patterns. His speech, which had been improving steadily, showed subtle signs of regression. "Mr. Frank," Maria said carefully, "let me see your eyes." She noted a slight difference in his pupil responses, a warning sign she'd learned to recognize during her years working with the DA's office. By evening, Frank's condition had deteriorated dramatically. Wade found Maria in the study, comparing medication logs with growing concern. "Someone's been tampering with his prescriptions again," she explained, spreading the records across Frank's desk. "Look at these patterns. The decline is too targeted, too precise." The investigation revealed a new vulnerability in their security. Dr. Amanda Hayes had recruited Angela Winters, a night nurse recently assigned to Frank's care. Security footage showed Angela making subtle adjustments to Frank's medication pump during her shifts. "The original medications are being diluted," Dr. Sarah Chun, an independent specialist Wade consulted, confirmed, "then replaced with compounds designed to mimic stroke symptoms." The sabotage achieved its intended effect. Frank suffered a massive stroke that left him comatose, machines monitoring his failing vital signs in the hospital's intensive care unit. Sarah's arrival at the hospital carried all the authority of her social position. She swept past the nurse's station, briefcase in hand, trailed by an expertly groomed legal team. "I'm taking control of my father's medical care," she announced, producing notarized documents. "These papers grant me full medical power of attorney. Mr. Russell has been negligently medicating my father." Rebecca Morrison's voice cut through the tension. "Those documents are based on fraudulent medical records." She stepped forward, her own legal files ready. "We have evidence linking Dr. Hayes to a pattern of medical manipulation." The hospital administrator, Dr. James Patterson, called an emergency meeting in his conference room. Rebecca laid out her evidence, years of paralegal experience evident in her presentation. "This isn't an isolated incident," she explained, displaying case files. "Look at these patients, all wealthy, all under Dr. Hayes' care, all experiencing sudden declines that led to changes in their estate planning." Wade noticed a pattern in the dates. Each crisis happened just before major property deals with Blake's companies. "Exactly," Rebecca confirmed. "The victim's assets were transferred to partners or children working with Thompson, usually at drastically reduced prices. The night of Frank's death transformed the mansion into a war zone. Fire alarms blared as smoke poured from the east wing. Security cameras went dark in synchronized patterns. Communication systems failed simultaneously. Diego, monitoring from his apartment's makeshift command center, recognized the attack's signatures immediately. "This is Marcus Chen's work," he reported through their backup communication line. "Lisa's husband. He's Blake's chief technology specialist. I've seen these patterns in other Thompson takeovers." What Blake and Sarah didn't know was that Wade had installed a completely independent backup system. Hidden cameras recorded their systematic search of Frank's study, their movements revealing professional practice. "The safe has to be here," Sarah muttered, running her fingers along the wood paneling. "Daddy always kept important documents close. Tax records, property deeds, financial statements." Blake examined the bookshelves with focused intensity. "What about behind these legal volumes?" Judges love their symbolism. The backup system captured the moment they found Frank awake and alert despite his paralysis. His eyes showed full comprehension as Sarah rifled through his papers, while Blake photographed documents with practiced efficiency. Frank's hand moved slowly toward a hidden panel in his wheelchair, a panic button Wade had installed weeks earlier. The alarm triggered just as the fire spread beyond control. Blake's hired arsonist had made a crucial mistake. The accelerants they used created toxic fumes when combined with the mansion's restored hardwoods, a chemical reaction unique to old-growth timber. Wade fought through black smoke, navigating corridors he'd memorized during countless renovations. The backup system's cameras caught Sarah and Blake's escape, leaving Frank trapped in his bedroom. Despite his desperate rush through the burning mansion, Wade arrived too late. Frank's last moments were captured by the hidden cameras, his final words carrying both accusation and absolution. Sarah chose this path. Long ago, he managed between labored breaths, gripping Wade's hand. You tried to show her another way. Remember, truth matters more than money. The fire investigation revealed the sophistication of Blake's plan. The arsonist had targeted specific structural points, using accelerants that should have destroyed all evidence. They hadn't counted on Wade's backup systems being protected in a fireproof server room. Chapter 8. The Hammer Falls. Catherine Thompson arrived at Wade's temporary office carrying an external hard drive. Her fingers moved across her laptop keyboard, accessing systems her brother thought impenetrable. Blake's arrogance was always his weakness, she explained, navigating through encrypted files. He thinks money can buy perfect security, forgets that even paid loyalty has limits. The servers revealed an intricate network of shell companies. Diego traced money trails through dozens of tax havens, each transaction revealing new layers of Blake's fraud. He's been embezzling from his own investors, Diego pointed out, displaying complex financial diagrams, including funds connected to Viktor Petrov's Russian business associates. Sarah's interrogation by Detective Sandra Martinez unfolded in a small room at Portland Police Headquarters. The detective's case files covered the table between them, each folder representing a different aspect of Blake's criminal enterprise. Start at the beginning, Martinez suggested, recording device ready. Tell me about the Children's Hospital fundraiser. Sarah's composure cracked slightly. I was 15. Wearing my first dress, playing at being grown up. Blake said I had potential, that I understood things other people couldn't see. How did he approach you? Gradually. Compliments at first, then suggestions. Little tests to prove I was special. Sarah's manicured nails tapped against the metal table. He'd asked me to get information from my friend's parents. Rich kids love to brag about their family's problems. Detective Martinez waited patiently as Sarah detailed Blake's grooming process. He taught me to see patterns, which families were vulnerable, which ones had secrets they'd pay to protect. And you became his willing student. Sarah's laugh held decades of bitterness. I thought I was using him too. Daddy wanted me to understand the value of hard work. Blake showed me shortcuts. Why build something when you can take it? The meeting of Blake's investors filled the Arlington Club's private dining room. Veronica Blackwood had arranged everything perfectly. The lighting subtle, the service discreet, the atmosphere conducive to serious discussion. Wade's presentation was methodical. Digital displays showed money trails through shell companies while Diego demonstrated how investor funds had been diverted into Blake's private accounts. Viktor Petrov's presence dominated the room. The legitimate businessman had built his reputation through decades of careful relationships. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried quiet menace. In Russia, he stated, setting down his water glass, business reputation is built on trust. Breaking that trust has traditional consequences. The investigation into Frank's death opened new avenues of prosecution. Dr. Hayes' scheme of manipulating diagnoses allowed Blake's associates to control estate planning. Lisa Chun discovered the full scope of her husband Marcus's involvement. He created an algorithm, Lisa explained to federal prosecutors. It searched medical records for specific combinations: wealthy patients, complex health issues, family conflicts, anything that made them vulnerable to manipulation. Wade's counterattack moved. Ray Martinez led teams documenting safety violations in Blake's properties. Their evidence, combined with Catherine's financial records, triggered multiple federal investigations. Jackson Hayes broke under questioning. His confession to federal prosecutors revealed decades of systematic corruption. Thompson had it down to a science, Hayes admitted. First, identify targets who wouldn't sell. Then create problems, accidents, threats, property damage. Make them desperate enough to deal. If that didn't work, he paused, looking at his hands. Some accidents were meant to be permanent. The scale of Blake's operations exceeded everyone's expectations. His manipulation of property values extended throughout the Pacific Northwest, creating artificial market conditions that forced sales at devastating discounts. Chapter 9. Justice and Legacy. Portland's courthouse reached capacity hours before the trial began. News cameras crowded the steps as Sarah took the stand, her prison jumpsuit a stark contrast to her former wardrobe. "Blake taught me to read people," she testified, her voice carrying to the packed gallery. "Find their weaknesses, their pressure points." Parents worried about sick children, businessmen hiding affairs, families with addiction issues. They all had secrets worth exploiting. Rebecca's testimony provided crucial context. "I watched my daughter change," she told the jury. "The light in her eyes became calculating. When I found messages between her and Blake, I tried to intervene. She convinced Frank I was unstable, jealous of her success." The courtroom fell silent as Frank's final recording played. His voice, though weakened, carried judicial authority one last time. "My daughter learned the wrong lessons," he stated. "Saw power as proof of worth. But true strength lies in how we help others, not how we control them." Wade's testimony focused on Frank's hidden generosity. He presented ledgers found in the judge's study, detailing years of anonymous support for struggling families. Even after his stroke, Wade explained, Frank was planning ways to help others. The last entry in his journal outlined a program for helping victims of financial fraud rebuild their lives. The verdicts reshaped Portland's business community. Blake received multiple life sentences. Sarah's cooperation earned consideration, but her sentence still ensured years of imprisonment. Dr. Hayes and Marcus Chun faced extensive criminal charges. Jackson Hayes' testimony led to investigations of similar schemes across multiple states, revealing a national pattern of corruption. The mansion's transformation honored Frank's principles. The Frank Morrison Center for Justice opened its doors 6 months after the trial. Maria Santos, as director, established programs supporting victims of financial fraud. Diego's cybersecurity division developed software identifying patterns of predatory business practices. Lisa Chun, fully cleared of connection to her husband's crimes, created training programs teaching ethical business practices. Rebecca Morrison found healing in establishing a foundation helping young people vulnerable to manipulation. Veronica Blackwood's social connections proved invaluable in raising awareness and funds. Catherine Thompson brought transparent financial management to the center, ensuring every dollar served its intended purpose. The Russian investors, impressed by Wade's integrity, hired his company to audit their other construction investments. Wade developed partnerships with local contractors, creating a network committed to ethical building practices. Ray Martinez's training program gave disadvantaged youth paths to legitimate success through construction skills. Viktor Petrov's whistleblower protection fund supported victims coming forward across the country. Their testimonies exposed dozens of corrupt developers, preventing countless families from falling victim to similar schemes. The scholarship Wade established in Sarah's name served as both warning and hope. Supporting students studying criminal justice and fraud prevention, it reminded future generations that character outlasts wealth. Sarah's letter from prison arrived unexpectedly. "I remember that first charity event," she wrote. "The dress Daddy bought me. How grown up I felt. Blake noticed me when none of the other adults did. Said I had a gift for understanding people's hidden desires." Wade shared the letter with Rebecca, opening the door for careful reconciliation between mother and daughter. Professional counselors guided their healing process, acknowledging both the manipulation Sarah had suffered and the choices she had made. The mansion's gardens became a place of reflection. The memorial wall, listed names of fraud victims who found justice through the Morrison Center. Wade often sat there with Frank's favorite books, their wisdom offering guidance for the battles ahead. The fortune that sparked the tragedy was gone, distributed to those who needed it most. But Wade had built something more lasting, a community dedicated to preventing others from facing similar destruction. The price of loyalty became more than Frank's story. It stood as testament to the power of integrity over greed, of genuine loyalty over manipulation. Epilogue: a decade later, Wade Russell stood in the Morrison Center's main hall, studying the newest addition to their Wall of Justice. The interactive display detailed their latest victory, exposing a nationwide network of predatory development schemes targeting historic neighborhoods. 10 years, Maria Santos remarked, joining him at the wall. Her role as the center's director had evolved far beyond her original caregiving duties. Sometimes it feels like yesterday we were just trying to protect one mansion. The Frank Morrison Center for Justice had become a beacon of hope in Portland's legal landscape. The restored Victorian Mansion's rooms, once witness to betrayal and corruption, now housed teams of investigators, counselors, and advocates dedicated to preventing financial fraud. Diego's new detection software caught this one early, Wade noted, gesturing to the display. Saved 3 family businesses from being forced into bankruptcy. Diego Santos, now 32, had transformed the center's cybersecurity division into a national resource. His early experiences documenting Sarah and Blake's schemes had shaped his approach to protecting vulnerable businesses. The pattern recognition algorithms are getting better, Diego explained, pulling up detailed analytics on his tablet. We can spot potential fraud clusters before the predators fully establish their networks. The center's success had inspired similar organizations across the country. Wade's construction company, now managed day-to-day by Ray Martinez, specialized in restoring historic properties while training at-risk youth in construction trades. Last year's apprenticeship program graduated 42 students, Ray reported during their weekly management meeting. 38 already have full-time positions with ethical contractors. The other 4 are pursuing advanced certifications. Lisa Chin's department focused on teaching business ethics and fraud prevention to new entrepreneurs. Her personal experience with betrayal, her ex-husband Marcus was still serving his federal sentence, added weight to her lessons about maintaining integrity under pressure. We're not just teaching them how to spot fraud, Lisa explained to a new group of students. We're showing them how to build businesses that serve communities rather than exploit them. Rebecca Morrison had transformed her foundation into a leading resource for families affected by manipulation and fraud. Her work with young people vulnerable to predatory relationships drew from painful personal experience. Sarah's story isn't unique, Rebecca told a gathering of counselors. Manipulators target bright, ambitious young people. They twist natural talents into tools for exploitation. Our job is to show them better paths. Sarah herself had used her prison time productively. After serving 8 years, she began working with the Foundation's rehabilitation program. Her insights into manipulation techniques proved valuable in helping others recognize and resist similar schemes. I can't undo what I did, Sarah acknowledged during a support group session, but I can help others understand how seemingly innocent choices lead down dangerous paths. Her relationship with Rebecca had slowly healed through years of counseling. They now co-authored educational materials about recognizing and resisting emotional manipulation in business relationships. Veronica Blackwood's social connections evolved into a powerful network of fraud prevention advocates. The wealthy circles that once enabled Sarah's schemes now actively supported the center's mission. Old money doesn't have to mean old corruption, Veronica often said at fundraising events. We can use our influence to protect communities rather than exploit them. Catherine Thompson's financial oversight kept the center's operations transparent and efficient. Her experience with Blake's betrayal drove her to create systems that could withstand any scrutiny. Trust requires verification, Catherine reminded her staff during training sessions. We maintain the highest standards so we can demand the same from others. The Russian investors who had been deceived by Blake became staunch allies. Viktor Petrov's Whistleblower Protection Fund expanded internationally, creating safe channels for exposing corruption in multiple countries. Business ethics transcend borders, Petrov noted during a video conference. The center's model shows how to fight corruption while preserving legitimate enterprise. Jimmy Carter, whose early warnings had helped expose Blake's schemes, now headed the center's outreach to construction industry whistleblowers. His network of informants regularly identified suspicious development patterns before they could fully develop. Most workers want to do honest work, Jimmy explained to new recruits. We give them safe ways to report problems without risking their livelihoods. The scholarship program established in Sarah's name had unexpected effects. Many recipients, learning the story behind the name, committed themselves to preventing similar tragedies. The price of loyalty scholarships don't just fund education, Wade told prospective students. They challenge recipients to consider how their talents can serve justice rather than exploitation. Maria's cousin Angela, once nearly drawn into Blake's security firm, now coordinated physical security for the center. Her team included several reformed former criminals who shared their expertise in preventing property-related crimes. Understanding how properties are targeted helps us protect vulnerable owners, Angela explained during a training session. We turn past mistakes into future prevention. The mansion's gardens flourished under professional care, but Wade maintained one section personally. The Memorial Grove, where Frank had spent his final years, became a place of reflection and renewal. Frank saw this coming, Wade reflected, tending the judge's favorite roses. Not just Blake's schemes, but the bigger picture. He knew we'd need organized resistance against systematic corruption. The center's library housed Frank's collected writings and legal opinions. Researchers studied his cases, finding early warnings about the intersection of wealth, power, and exploitation. Judge Morrison understood that corruption breeds in complexity, a visiting law professor observed. His decisions consistently supported transparency and community protection. The impact rippled beyond Portland. Similar centers opened in cities facing development-related fraud. Wade's team provided guidance, sharing lessons learned from their decade of experience. Ray's training program expanded to include international students. Construction teams from developing countries learned both technical skills and ethical business practices. We're not just building structures, Ray told each new class. We're building communities that can resist predatory development. Lisa's business ethics curriculum was adopted by several universities. Her case studies, drawn from the center's experiences, helped future business leaders recognize manipulation tactics. Ethics isn't abstract theory, Lisa emphasized in her lectures. It's practical protection against sophisticated predators. Diego's security systems evolved into industry standards. His software helped multiple agencies identify and prevent fraud attempts across various sectors. Technology amplifies intention, Diego often said. It can enable either corruption or protection. The choice lies in how we use it. The center's success attracted attention from powerful interests. Attempts at interference or corruption still occurred, but the systems Wade and his team had built proved resilient. We expect resistance, Wade explained to new staff members. Each attempt to undermine our work validates its importance. Rebecca's foundation expanded its focus to include educational programs about digital manipulation. Social media and cryptocurrency schemes presented new challenges for protecting vulnerable people. The methods evolve, Rebecca noted during a board meeting, but the basic psychology remains. Predators still exploit trust and ambition. Sarah's rehabilitation work extended to helping other imprisoned white-collar criminals recognize their impacts on communities. Her programs had an unusually high success rate in preventing recidivism. Understanding the human cost changes people, Sarah observed. Numbers on spreadsheets become real families, real lives affected. The scholarship program's alumni formed a network of fraud prevention professionals. They shared resources and insights, creating an evolving knowledge base of protection strategies. Each generation faces new challenges, Wade told a gathering of scholarship recipients. But the fundamental choice between integrity and exploitation remains constant. The center's archives grew to include thousands of cases, each documenting different aspects of predatory behavior. Researchers used this database to identify emerging threats and develop countermeasures. Pattern recognition is crucial, Diego explained to visiting cybersecurity experts. Predators may modify their methods, but their underlying strategies remain similar. The mansion itself became a symbol of resilience. Its restored architecture demonstrated how preservation and progress could coexist, while its new purpose showed how past wounds could transform into future protection. This building embodies our mission, Maria told visitor groups. It stands as testament to the power of turning betrayal into benefit for others. Wade's construction company maintained its high standards, often working at reduced rates to help vulnerable property owners maintain their historic buildings. Protecting architectural heritage means protecting communities, Wade explained to his project managers. Every preserved building represents a family or business anchored against displacement. The center's influence extended into policymaking. Their documented successes led to stronger regulations against predatory development practices in multiple jurisdictions. Change happens through persistent effort, Wade reflected during a strategy session. Each small victory builds towards systemic transformation. Frank's legacy lived on through the center's daily work. His principles of justice and community protection guided each new initiative and program. We honor Judge Morrison not just by remembering, Wade told each incoming class of staff members, but by extending his work into new areas of need. The Price of Loyalty story became required reading in business ethics courses. Students analyzed how personal choices shaped larger patterns of corruption or protection. Understanding motivation is crucial, Lisa explained in her seminars. People rarely start with intentional corruption. They slide into it through small compromises. As Wade walked the mansion's halls each morning, he saw not just the remnants of past battles, but the ongoing work of prevention and protection. Each office, each meeting room, each dedicated staff member represented another line of defense against exploitation. We've built something stronger than wealth, he often told visitors. We've created a community dedicated to protecting other communities. The center's work continued evolving, adapting to new challenges while maintaining its core mission. The network of allies and resources grew stronger each year, creating an increasingly effective shield against predatory practices. This was always bigger than one family's tragedy, Wade reflected during the center's 10th anniversary celebration. It's about showing how integrity and collective action can overcome systematic corruption. The future held new challenges, but the foundation built through years of dedicated work proved solid. The Price of Loyalty transformed from a cautionary tale into an ongoing mission, protecting future generations from the manipulation and exploitation that had claimed so many in the past. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.